So this evening, my talk is on wise effort. And sometimes it's called skillful effort. Other times it's called wise effort, right diligence. Whatever that name is, this was actually the sixth element that the Buddha talked about upon his awakening. It's part of the Eightfold Path. It's part of those elements towards freedom that he talked about when he first awakened underneath the Bodhi tree. And this effort is actually what I like to refer to as energy. And what I'm feeling now, and oftentimes I was talking to Evan when we first started, and for me, sometimes I do a talk about things that actually I need to learn and feel into, or that's been on my mind. And so what's been on my mind lately is this idea of conscious evolution. And what I realize is that it really does come down to these mind states that we develop skillfully or unskillfully. And this is all energy. This energy directs life energy in a very transformative way. And it's like the healing action that fosters our wholeness. So before I begin talking about wise effort, I want to first just kind of do a refresher on the Four Noble Truths and then what makes up the Eightfold Path. So after the Buddha became awakened, he said, I have four things that are true, the Four Noble Truths. The first is that there's suffering. And we've heard the word dukkha, right? And the second are the causes of suffering: greed, aversion, or hatred, and ignorance or delusion. The third noble truth is that there is cessation of suffering. There is a ceasing in this life. Sounds amazing and compelling. And then so often the Buddha's been called the physician. So here is the prescription that he laid out. It is how to actually begin that ceasing of the suffering, the extension of suffering, which is called the Eightfold Path. And he named it as wise view or understanding, wise intention, wise speech, wise action, wise livelihood, wise effort, which we'll be talking about this evening, wise mindfulness, and wise concentration. So this talk this evening around wise effort is more than just one of the path factors, but rather it's an integral element of radical transition of our mind states, opening us up to the pathways of a new paradigm and a conscious mental shift. And as I mentioned before, what the word that I came up with was a conscious evolution. This evening, right before this talk, before I got on Zoom, something came to my mind, and I don't know if any of you remember, there was a song by In Vogue in 1992. It was called Free Your Mind and the Rest Will Follow. Remember that? Right? I'm not going to sing it because I'm not a very good singer. Free your mind and the rest will follow. You know, yes, exactly. And that's what started to ring for me. It just came up. It was like, oh, that's right. Free your mind and the rest will follow. And we have a choice to do that. The Buddha taught that wise effort, you can achieve it in four different ways. You can view it in four different ways. One, avoid, and I'm going to turn back to my papers here, avoid unhealthy mind states. Abandon unhealthy mind states once they've arisen. moving the mind to healthy mind states. And the fourth way of viewing wise effort is maintaining the mind on healthy mind states once they have already arisen. Plain and simple, this right effort is energy. It takes us into a whole different way of looking at how we can actually change the paradigm of our mind and our thoughts. In Pali, which is this ancient language of the Buddha 2,600 years ago, the word for energy is virya. And it's this kind of energy with its multiple prongs. It fuels desire, aggression, violence. It fuels ambition, but it also fuels generosity, self-discipline, kindness, concentration, and understanding for ourselves and others. And it fuels that from the positionality of our heart, mind, and body. So this way in which we can begin to develop a conscious evolution is really starting right here. So let's begin by understanding these mind states that require that kind of energy. It's an intention. Just as one of the Eightfold Path is wise intention, this effort, you need to have the effort in order for it to spring forth. When we exert this kind of energy, we put forth in wholesome ways, it's a direct movement. And I may be understating it, actually. I may be overstating it. But it's a direct movement towards the liberation from suffering. And I know it's a bold statement, but I really believe, and I know from my own direct experience, that virya, this energy, opens us in what the Buddha's instructions actually said: understanding, abandoning, reclaiming, and maintaining. And it takes effort to do it. There's a book that I absolutely enjoy reading. It's Philip Moffat's book called Dancing with Life. And in it, he says, right effort is classically associated with working with your mind in meditation, but it also applies to working with your mind in your daily life. So let's look at this daily life. You know, we come to the cushion, or we come to our meditation, and we think that, okay, I'm sitting and now I'm going to be aware of my mind state. I'm going to be aware of what's arising, my thoughts, and then I'm going to watch them arise and pass away, and all is good because I've done it on the cushion. But how do you actually begin to become aware of these mind states in your daily life? This particular tenet actually has this sense of awareness in it. You have to be able to witness what the mind is doing, what the mind is speaking, how it is. You have to pay attention, actually, to those unskillful mindset states. So you can actually begin to understand, this is unhealthy, this is unskillful. Let me abandon them. Let me not push them away, but actually be a witness to them and allow them to, once we recognize and become aware of any mind state that's going on, they lose their power. They lose their substance. They no longer have the clinging, the way that they attach themselves to us. And oftentimes what we try to do is we try to protect our own energy, protect these mind states as they arise. We spend a lot of time protecting these energies, especially protecting from what? And actually, what are we protecting them for? So we could be right or righteous or sit in this myriad of places of being uncomfortable and unsatisfied. If we realize that unwholesome mental proliferations are of no service to our ultimate paths to freedom, then it makes sense to abandon and cease them by putting out the energy to protect them. Because protecting them only distracts us from actually cultivating positive mind states. So I'm going to circle back at the end of the talk this evening, but I'm going to ask you a question. How did you begin your day? What was your intention, your aspiration, your prayer, your meditation, your body movement? Just how did you begin your day? But we'll come back to that in the end, because that in itself is energy. And I think it's really important not to keep energy separate from this embodied presence. I think it's essential to have them interconnected. And I'm really talking about leaving no part of our body out. Not just the mind state, but the body, the heart, the breath, as we did in our meditation. Recognizing that this energy is an embodiment, then it can be also transformed. And out of this energy field, once we recognize it, we have this opportunity to actually free ourselves, allow that energy field to guide us instead of allowing it for us to become succumbed by habit mind. And you know what I'm talking about when I talk about habit mind, right? The things we do over and over again, the patterns. And sometimes we catch it. Sometimes we can go, oh, there it is, doing it again. And sometimes it becomes so comfortable that all we know is that this is, yeah, I'll stay here because this is what I always do. You know, that I've always done it this way, or I've always thought of it this way. We have the capacity, all of us, with mindful awareness to be able to see when the habit is happening, see the habit mind, and use the energy that we use for the patterns to actually shift us into wholesome mind states. Maybe it's a word. Maybe it's that place where you're about to be a naysayer. You know how that is? Like, or how somebody says something, right? Well, you know, girl, you know, Josephine did this. And all of a sudden you're like, yeah, Josephine did that. And all of a sudden, you kind of chime into it, right? And here you are, right? In these unwholesome states of mind. And it's not even about anyone else. It's about what goes on inside ourselves. And if we start to kind of feel the energy, really feel the energy of what's going on inside us, we can actually move out of it. And that comes with practice. So wise effort is also, as Thich Nhat Hanh refers to it, as wise diligence. So again, this is practice, right? It is the core of the other path factors. Wise mindfulness, wise concentration, and all the other 4 path factors. And as we cultivate, and we use this word cultivate oftentimes in Buddhism and in our talks, because this is what we cultivate: mind states, we cultivate heart openings, whether it be loving kindness or compassion. These are cultivations, it's a skill. And as we cultivate these skills around wholesome mind states, every path you walk towards freedom is walked with more ease, with more interconnection, with all that is existing around you. And the Buddha encouraged us to choose wholesome mind states, these mental states, over unwholesome ones in these moment-to-moment experiences. This is what mindfulness is, moment to moment. being able to have that direct experience. So let's face it, and it's not easy to acquire this effort. So moving your mind to embracing something that is much more positive, it isn't easy because we're wired. Our minds are wired to live within this landscape of our conditioned and patterned minds. And I wish I had the I'm not the scientific reasons why we're patterned that way. But I don't know. But I do know that with practice, we can begin to make that shift towards a new consciousness. We can align ourselves with awareness that we can make with energy and determination. We can begin to pay attention when we are in motion in these ways that are unskillful and unhealthy for us. We can begin to take action. We can begin to understand differently. So the other day I was I was thinking about this, like, when was the last time I paid attention to my evening rituals, right? Or was I just doing it by rote? When was the last time I paid it? When was the last time you paid attention? Not only to what you're doing, your doingness, but your mind. I mean, in small, subtle ways, the thoughts begin to proliferate. Again, in the words of in the ancient language of Pali, it's called papancha. It just starts to go on. We see that in our meditations, right? One thought turns into another thought, and all of a sudden you're grabbed onto that, you got a story, and you're off and running. When was the last time you paid attention to your mind? What I'm thinking, what I'm feeling even? What is triggering the feeling and the thoughts? When was the last time? I thought about that the other night. I was saying when I was doing an evening ritual, which is I brush my teeth, I take some meds, I do a little prayer, I'm doing but I wasn't paying attention. I was doing it by rote. And I was wondering at that time, why am I not paying attention? Why am I not being mindful? Because I really wanted to get it done. I had no energy. It was the end of the day. It didn't matter. All those things. Does that happen to you too? Our pattern responses, our pattern reactions. And I'm not trying to create something different in my life. I just want to actually create some ease in my life. And with that, I have to be aware. Because I don't know about you, but I want to be happy. And I want to check out my behavior if it doesn't serve me any longer. And that's what the mental states do. Unhealthy mental states. So I want to grow stronger. And I want to change that paradigm again so that I'm using the energy in the right way, in the skillful way, in the wise way. I want to begin to transform whatever negativity might be lingering for myself. As the Buddha said, abandon those and make it beneficial for my own transformation. And if we are starting to water the seeds of unwholesome thoughts, what do you think is going to grow? It's like, we have gardens and we're trying to water them in this heat. Actually, we're trying to do a little bit more watering. But if you have a lawn and all you have is weeds and you keep watering them, what you're going to get is more weeds. And in fact, what's going to grow stronger in the terms of our Buddhist cosmology is greed, ignorance, aversion, and unhealthy and wrong views. So we have a choice to water, to plant, actually, not even to water yet, but to plant the seeds of wholesome intention, thoughts, and mind states. And then once we plant those seeds, and I just keep calling it energy, we then begin to water them. In one of the discourses that the Buddha said to his monks, in order to protect your mind, you need to exercise wise attention. We're just, I just said, pay attention, and to avoid unwise attention. He said to stick to what you know to be true, especially in the six senses: smell, taste, hearing, seeing, feeling, and thinking. These are the sensations that we have to also not ignore. They show up, and in that sixth sense is thinking, the mind states. He urged us to put with the small, uncomfortable realities of life without trying to fix things, but actually change things. And when you venture down that path, you begin to see how muddy the pathway is. Trying to fix it, trying to move it, trying to shed it. Instead of witnessing it, seeing the energy that you're putting towards it, and making the conscious evolutionary shift. He also told his disciples not to notice the signs and the features of any external stimulus that might give rise to unwholesome thoughts. And that's what we're talking about, like this kind of co-signing with somebody, right? Or the external way in which so much of our stimulus is coming at us right now. So much of negativity is coming at us. How do we not put attention there, but actually sit back, examine it, investigate it, not to get hooked in it, so that our eyes are not, we don't get caught with our eyes with all of the other senses, so that we can observe what is actually going on. And that's saying a lot, The Buddha kind of instructed us, gave us these guidelines for wise effort. But it really comes down to, how do we practice with it? So what I'm really talking about is this energy and determination. And for me, when I first heard the word wise diligence that Thich Nhat Hanh uses, I was a little intimidated, because I thought, okay, diligence, I want to fight against diligence. I don't want to be locked into anything, right? I want to have some spaciousness in my practice. But what I realized is that I needed discipline. I needed a guideline. I needed a guidepost. I needed to figure out how I could manifest the difference and actually bring myself to joy and happiness. And really, the only way I could do that is through practice. I needed to nourish all of those things were also joyous and interesting, bring some interest into my practice. And if you're going to commit to a lifelong practice, then you need to make sure that you're bringing joy and happiness into it. Otherwise, you may not be practicing in the way that is going to fulfill you. And I'm not saying it's always joy and it's always happiness, because we know that there's sorrow and we know that there's suffering. But what are we bringing to our meditation in this way of energy? And the Buddha was onto something here, because he used wise energy also in the 7 factors of awakening. This is also part of the foundation of mindfulness, the Actually, it was the Dhammas, the fourth foundation of mindfulness, the 7 factors of awakening, and one of them is energy. So he doesn't leave anything out, and neither should we. So you are willing to exert that energy and plant those seeds and water those seeds of wholesome mind states. Perhaps you can dance a little bit more effortlessly through your life. You can reap the harvest that comes out of it, which is maybe calm. Maybe it's a little bit more mindfulness. Maybe it's a deeper level of concentration. Maybe it's absolute joy. And when all of these elements and factors are in place, come together, you don't have to force yourself. Your effort and energy will come naturally. But the only way that can happen is if we actually put the energy into witnessing and knowing when they have arisen in an unhealthy manner. And taking the steps that the Buddha has given us to understand, to abandon, to see when they have arisen in a healthy manner and to maintain them. First, identifying. What's the trigger? Ask yourself in this place of investigation. And that's what we do in our practice. We start to go underneath whatever is arising. We have to begin to look at what these habit patterns are. And one of the things that, I don't know how many of you have heard about the Buddha's aunt actually, but she raised him. Maha Pajapati was her name. And she was present when the Buddha was born. His mother died shortly thereafter. And so she raised him. And through the course of his going on out to receive his enlightenment, many years later, she went also to join him and the Sangha. And she asked him, and in fact, I just actually saw this posted today, which it was interesting. And I'm going to find this, what he actually said to her. Mahapajapati asked the Buddha for advice to help guide her practice. The Buddha told her to do whatever she knew from her own experience and common sense to lead to good qualities in herself. That's what I've been talking about. Not that I'm the Buddha or anything like that. The things to be done, he said, would lead to this. So here we have this another prescription, which I love he does. Dispassion, not passion. Disentanglement, not entanglement. Dispersion, not accumulation. Wanting little, not much. Contentment, not discontent. Peaceful solitude, not gregariousness. Effort, not laziness. Being easily supportable, not fussy or demanding. So what he's really saying here is to avoid in your practice greed, hatred, and delusion. These 3 very core places that he considers the root to suffering. And with that, he's telling her to bring some effort and interest into her practice. And none of this, again, is easy. This energy we're feeling in our bodies. None of it is easy. And yet I believe it's attainable because I have a direct experience. And I know many of you do too. Whether you're on retreat or doing your own personal practice, you have a direct experience of how the shift of the mind state, the shift of the energy, happens with diligent effort, with diligence. And it also requires us to leave nothing, no part of ourselves out. So Thich Nhat Hanh speaks of this like this. If we lack right diligence, it is because we have not found a way to be proactive that is true to us, or have not felt deeply the need to practice. A mindful life can be wonderful. He says, waking up this morning, I smile. 24 brand new hours are before me. I vow to live fully in each moment and to look at all that begins with eyes of compassion. And this is a verse. This is a morning chant. This is what he does, bringing his own energy into his practice, into his day. So there's a conscious evolution that's arising, and I feel it. I think most of us are starting to enter a different field here, an energetic field. Our mental and our cognitive ways of relating are making more room for spacious awareness. And that spacious awareness is defined by not having these boundaries or particular disciplines that take us into this, away from our true knowing, our true selves, this true nature of who we are. It takes us beyond fixed views and takes us to a much more expansive place of being able to recognize all of the senses and really look at how can we change the paradigm of our mind states. This evolution is happening. It's happening within me, it's happening within you. It's happening in the collective. But I'm going to circle back with you with the question I asked you before. How did you begin your day? Did you invite positive and wholesome mental states, mental thoughts? Or did you bemoan the dawn, like, oh. Most mornings, I try not to bemoan the dawn. I try to wake up with praise on my lips. But I'm going to be real honest with you and very transparent. This morning, I didn't do it. This morning, I didn't sleep well because it was really hot last night. I tossed and turned, and I typically get up pretty early because I want to go walking early in the morning. So when the alarm went off, immediately I could feel my mind starting to go into these places that didn't bring any type of energy towards me. Zero. I wanted to turn back over. I wanted to lay back down. I wanted to actually, I didn't want to put the covers on because it was still hot, but I wanted to just get a few more hours of sleep, a few more minutes of sleep. So how do you begin your day? What kind of energy do you put forth? Do you wake up with, do you invite wholesome thoughts? Or do you bemoan the dawn? Family, there is a conscious evolution that's occurring. Feel into that energy through your practice and through your daily life. It is not enough. There's so much being asked of us now. And it's not enough just to do it on the cushion. We really have to have some interest and energy and begin to work on this change and transformation of our paradigm. I feel it in all of us. I feel it in myself. I'm going to end this evening with just a short quote from Bhante Guttaratana. He's a Sri Lankan monk who many of you may know his book, Mindfulness in Plain English. He also wrote 8 Mindful Steps to Happiness. He has another book called The Path of Serenity and Insight. I had the pleasure of being able to sit with him for a metta retreat once, many years ago, probably, I don't know, 20 years ago, something like that. And he was a profound presence for me. And I found this quote that he said, "The Buddha says that just as in the great ocean, there is but one taste, that taste of salt, so in his doctrine and discipline, there is but one taste. That taste is freedom." May we all follow the path towards liberation, evolution, and freedom. Thank you, Sangha. To my practice, I start with an intention. First of all, I start with really living into the refuges and the precepts. So I say those before I begin my practice because I want to ground myself. And then secondly, I really create an intention for each practice period that I sit in, and usually I sit in the morning. So I create my intention for that practice period. And oftentimes it is around joy, or it may be around compassion or love. So that's how, and I also bring interest, because if I practice in the morning or if I practice in the evening, I tend to get a little sleepy, right? And so when you're kind of dealing in that place of dullness, you have to bring some interest to it. So that's what I do. I bring interest and an intention to practice. So thanks for the question. Let's just take a moment and just rest our eyes. And I dedicate the merit of our practice this evening and all that we have absorbed and learned, so that we may cultivate these mind states that begin to evolve into a new conscious way of being. And as we do that, may our gifts and our offerings be a benefit to all beings, two-legged, four-legged, winged, and gilled. All beings, may they find the path to freedom, and may they follow it. Stay cool.